So as soon as it comes to a boil, you want to just skim off all the impurities on top, and then you also want to just turn it right down and we'll simmer for about 20 minutes. So it's come to a boil. So what you want to do is take a ladle and take off all the impurities and skim off all the impurities. So these are things that from the bone itself and everything else within the chicken. You want to make sure just give it a swirl so all the impurities go to the side. You get some of the fat as well that you don't want. And then now you want to turn it right down and simmer and just let it go for a bit. So one way to check to see if it's okay, I'm going to take a pair of tongs and I'm going to lift the chicken out and then let it cool for a little bit, or you can use your hands or you can use a fork. So what you want to do is actually take forks and just to see if you can just pull apart. So if you can pull it apart, I think this is good. So what you want to do is just put this chicken back in the soup, turn the stove off, and just let it rest and come to room temperature. Once it's cool, you want to remove the chicken. And then for the broth, we're gonna strain it and save it for later use. For the chicken, we're just gonna pull it apart. And we'll make sure we run our fingers through, make sure we don't have any bones or any pieces like that. So just gonna basically pull it apart. So now I have the chicken that's already pulled apart. Just when you're pulling the chicken apart, make sure, double check there's no bones, small pieces of bones or fat. We'll pull the fat off of the chicken as well. And don't worry about having big pieces. As we cook down, the chicken's gonna shred a little bit more. And on the right of that, we also have our chicken stock or chicken base or the broth that we have. For the remainder of the chicken tinga recipe, you need half an onion, 2 cloves of garlic, roughly 3 tomatoes, and a can of chipotle peppers in adobo sauce. So for the onions, it takes half an onion, you can take off the skin. And then I'm going to slice it. I'm nervous right now because Megan's looking at me. Yes. There's a core that you cut out, and then after that there's lines on the onions and just slice down. When you get to the end, you're going to put on the side and then that, and we'll put in a bowl. Next we have our garlic. Smash it down. Smash it down. We'll peel off the skin and then we'll cut the end, and then we'll cut the end again, and then we're going to cut it, slicing it down. Just be careful, watch your fingers. Same thing here. When we get to this point, we're just going to run our knife in multiple directions. Next we have the tomatoes. We have washed all the tomatoes. We want to cut them in half. And then there's a little bit of white part here. I usually use a V. We'll cut in a V direction. So I'll cut in a V direction. And then I'll cut the tomatoes cut the half in quarters, and then maybe just rough chop it. So again, half again, so you have quarters, and then just rough chop it into 2 pieces. The last thing we have here is this can of chipotle peppers in adobo sauce. So it already comes like this. Just be careful. Depending on how much spice you want, with this I usually take 2 peppers out of here in this recipe. Make sure I get 2 full ones, 2 peppers, and then we're going to chop it. So just before we start, we have our chicken that we simmered for 20 to 40 minutes with some onions, garlic, and then we pulled it apart. We have some chicken stock, we have some sliced onions, we have minced garlic, 3 tomatoes diced, and then also the chipotle peppers. So with a skillet heated, I'm gonna add roughly 2 to 3 tablespoons of neutral oil. In this case it was sunflower oil. We'll let the oil heat up. So you can hear a little bit of a sizzle. So we're going to soften the onions and the garlic for 3 to 5 minutes. After 3 to 5 minutes, you can add the chicken. The peppers. The tomatoes. And then some of the stock from the chicken, or the broth from the chicken. And then we'll bring up the heat, we'll bring it to a boil, and then we'll simmer. After 10 minutes or so, you can kind of see that the tomatoes have broken down, and then the chicken's gonna be a little bit more shredded just by moving and more cooking. And then we're gonna keep reducing it until it's a little bit thicker in terms of the sauce. So after simmering for a while, you just want to make sure there's no more liquid left at the bottom of the pan. And then after that, you have to taste it. If it needs a little bit of salt, you can add a little bit of salt. If it's not spicy enough, you can simply chop up another pepper and then cook it a little bit longer. And then that's it.
Oh.